Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. Now I realise Smallville videos won't get the views that things like the DCEU will, but Smallville is a passion of mine. I was obsessed with it in its original run and I'm obsessed with it now all over again, rewatching the whole show. So I've just literally finished watching season 2. Season 2 is the very reason this show went for 10 seasons. It's what Our Miles did with it. They ditched the Freak of the Week, which wasn't very popular with fans. I personally thought it was very good. It worked for what they wanted to do in the first season. But what they did with season 2 was phenomenal in a sense of moving the show on. It changed it from being just a show that was just going to be stuck in one place to a show that was going on a journey. The introduction of the Kawatche Caves was very clever. You couldn't have the Fortress of Solitude so early. They probably didn't have the budget for it or what they wanted to do. Now, introducing Terence Stamp as Jor-El, or the voice of Jor-El as it was genius. To take someone out of the movies, and we knew him as General Zod, and to give him such a prominent, iconic role as Jor-El, it was very shocking to me what a different type of Jor-El this was. This wasn't the wise scientist that wanted to guide Clark to his destiny and advise him. This guy is challenging Clark. He's testing him. We will later find out, if you're only just watching Smallville, that all this stuff he's doing to him are trials. He's testing him. And it was such a fabulous idea because in Superman the movie, it's really Jor-El says, listen, this is what you've got to do. And Clark just says, yes, sir. But in this, Clark is resistant to what Jor-El wants him to do. He wants to decide whether he becomes a hero or not. Ultimately, it's him who decides to become Superman, not because his father tells him that's what he's got to be. So this whole season is so clever and so brilliant. And what I love about this season, it really fleshes out all the characters even more. Lex is more fleshed out. The decision to make Lionel Luthor, aka the fabulous John Glover, by the way, you can follow him on Twitter now, very exciting for me as well. He's such a good actor, and probably apart from Michael Rosenbaum, the most superior actor on the show. To get him was so big, and Lionel Luthor really was the main villain in Smallville, and what a villain he was. So multi-layered, so multi-dimensional, and it was really iconic to see the first few scenes with Clark and Lionel, and when Lionel really gets a gauge on who Clark is, and he becomes as obsessed with Clark as Lex does. In season 2, we had the introduction of Helen, Dr. Helen Bryce, and this is kind of Lex's love interest for season 2. Now, Emmanuel Vega, who played her really well. I'm not too sure whether I think that kind of whole thing worked. And it's very interesting when we get to season 3 that they've really done away with her after the first 2 episodes of season 3 and what happens with her. I don't really want to spoil it for you people who have never seen it before. But she was interesting, and she was an interesting dynamic, and also very interesting that she knew about Clark and never told Lex because of what she does to Lex ultimately, which wasn't very nice. And she's an opportunist. So it was very surprising that an opportunistic character didn't betray Clark too. That's interesting. But really, she's just after money and power. But she could have got the ultimate money and power if she kind of betrayed Clark. I'm kind of sad that they didn't bring her back because she doesn't actually die, which is really interesting. So she was an interesting aspect of the season, especially when she helps with Martha, and she helps with Clark when he falls ill as well. You've got fabulous episodes like Fever, which were really groundbreaking episodes. And again, moving it away from the Freak of the Week, it really made things really, really interesting. And when we look in terms of Chloe and her character, she's slowly becoming more and more jealous of Clark's relationship with Lana. And ultimately, within that season, this drives a wedge between them. I think it was very sensible to give Pete more to do, because Pete has very little to do in season 1 apart from being kind of the third wheel. So you get a lot more from Pete in this season, and you'll get a bit more. He'll get his own episode in season 3 as well, if you ever see it. I love that episode as well. So it was great to see Pete doing a lot more. The relationship between Jonathan and Clark gets deeper. Jonathan Kent is the father we all wanted. John Schneider as Jonathan Kent is genius. I mean, we'd never really seen, I know we had Glenn Ford play him in the movie, Superman the movie, but this is something else. This is really a beautiful father and son relationship. Thank you for always believing in me, Dad. You're welcome, son. Start to cry. Just so emotional. And then Jonathan and Lex get really close this season as well. Of course, this is a relationship that's doomed to fail, like the relationship between Clark and Lex. Of course, Rosetta, a personal favourite for any Superman fan, the introduction of Christopher Reeve as Dr. Virgil Swan. As I've always said, this was genius by Almaz. You know, they could have just willed Christopher Reeve in to do a kind of Stan Lee cameo, but he plays a prominent character in Clark's life. It's him. He tells him about kryptonite and where he's from. And that episode is beautiful. We again saw him in season 3, which I'll talk in my season 3 review when I get there. I'll start watching season 3 tomorrow. I'll watch an episode a day. So such an important season. So for any showrunner running one of these genius shows, look to Smallville, where they went from season 1 to season 2. And as I said, they took the story on. They brought in new concepts, and it was very, very interesting and very important what they did. They made the show a lot more interesting and in places a lot more sci-fi. There's some, as I said, great scenes between Clark and Lionel, especially in the Kawatche Caves near the end of the season. Really, really good, where you see Lionel for the notorious intellectual villain he really is. And it really is so good. I think this is so good this season. And as I say, it's the glue that held this show together for a decade. Without that season being the way it was, Smallville wouldn't have been the success it was. That episode when they're in Metropolis and Lionel and Martha are being held hostage, and you've got this iconic moment where Clark goes up to the roof of the Daily Planet. We all know Clark's destiny with the Daily Planet, and he jumps from that roof to the roof of Luther Court Plaza. It's such an iconic moment, and it's brilliant. He doesn't fly. He leaps from one building to another. Now, anyone who knows the very first Action Comics Superman comic knows that at first Superman couldn't fly. He was just leaping from skyscraper to skyscraper. So really good that they kind of echoed that situation from Superman's origins. I could sit here all day purring over Smallville. We never saw Clark put the suit on once this season, and he won't put the suit on for the entire show until the series finale. Now, a lot of people didn't like that, but I did like that because this is a proper prequel story. This is the journey of how Clark Kent becomes Superman and how Lex Luthor becomes the megalomaniac, and it really does work. In this season, Clark and Lex are still friends, but Lex becomes very notorious himself. He still steals the vial of Clark's blood. Now, this is the kind of interesting thing as well. We don't really know what he knows about Clark by now. Does he know it's Clark's blood? Does he just think the blood's extraordinary, maybe a sample of blood from a meteor freak? We really don't know. And of course, another beautiful episode in season 2 was Ryan. They had Ryan in an episode called Stray in season 1, and they brought him back. And he can read people's minds. And it turns out he's got some kind of tumour. And we see Ryan die in this episode. Now, what's so beautiful about this episode? It teaches Clark that even Superman can't save everyone. And that is such a big commentary for this character and for this show. Ultimately, Clark does everything to save this kid, but he can't. Then we get the revelation that Martha's pregnant. Martha and Jonathan thought they could never have kids, right? Martha always thought she couldn't conceive a child. And ultimately in that finale, for Clark to be the cause of her losing her dream, of her losing her baby, was devastating. And of course in the finale, Clark tries to destroy the key because Jor-El's telling him that he has to do as he says, he has to leave Smallville. Clark's about to set upon a relationship after 2 seasons of Lorna lusting, as Chloe puts it. They're finally going to get together, but of course it can't happen, can it? So really a brilliant season with a brilliant beginning, middle and ending. There's some damp episodes in it, but ultimately this is a show that works. This is a season that works. The story before the story element really works. And when we see so many prequels failing in cinema and in TV, it's amazing that Alan Miles got this so right. It was so original, so unique and very, very emotional. But the most important thing with these guys was they knew how to flesh out characters. They knew how to make situations interesting. You know, this is a 10 out of 10 season. This was a show that would give Superman fans everything. And for me, Smallville is the Bible of Superman. I think I might have said it in my season 1 review that I feel that, you know, if you have kids in the future and who get interested in Superman, you know, take them back to Smallville. Show them how Clark Kent becomes Superman. It will be a very rewarding thing for a father to pass to his son, or a mother to pass to her daughter or son, you know, vice versa. This show is so strong, and this is why I despise Arrowverse, because it hasn't got the depth of this one show. Arrowverse is a franchise with many shows that is not deep enough, doesn't flesh its characters enough, and compare it with Smallville, you'd never watch it again.